You did not? Good. Thank you. Thank you for coming. Bill Hammond. And after Bill Hammond, we'll have on board Ty. Okay, now. T-Y-R-E-A. Tyre? Is that right, Tyre? All right, I got you, Tyre, and you're going to help me with this last one, right? All right.
Mr. Chairman and members, I'm Bill Hammond. I'm president of the Texas Association of Business, and I'm here, unfortunately, to testify in opposition to your legislation. There are parts of it that we agree with and parts of it that we disagree, and I had to kind of, split the baby a little bit this morning when I was trying to decide how to register. And I appreciate, Mr. Chairman, your efforts to work with us on the legislation and the opportunities we've had to visit with you. And clearly, we're hoping that it's a work in progress. Our concern is that we're not graduating enough children who are career or college ready, who can successfully go on to a community college without having to take remedial courses. About half the kids who show up at the doors of community colleges today who are high school graduates have to take remedial courses. And as a result, many of them give up. They don't want to take these remedial courses. They don't get credit for them. They have to pay for them. And they're like a wall that prohibits them going on in many cases. And we know that 2/3 of the jobs of the future that are being created will require some post-secondary degree or certificate of some kind. Maybe not even an associate's degree, but a certificate from an institution of higher education, whether it's a private or a community college. So given the fact that only about 25% of our students today are graduating career or college ready based on either assessments by the ACT, or if you look at the TAKS commended, passing both math and reading at the commended level, that's about 25%. We believe about 65% of ninth graders graduate in 4 years. Obviously, there's a lot of debate about what exactly that number is, but that means that only 16% of our ninth graders are graduating in 4 years career or college ready. I think that we made enormous strides, kindergarten through 8th grade, in terms of closing the gap between the minorities and the Anglo students and the overall performance. And we should and are proud of our performance there. But at the high school level, it's as if we fall off a cliff once we get to 9th grade. The current testing regime is pretty reasonable in the early grades, and I think the law that we're operating under now, House Bill 3, is a good one with regard to K through 8. But the old law, if you will, basically administered a high school graduation test in the 11th grade. And if you look at the rigor in that test, it's 8th grade. And that doesn't work. The kids were passing the test in increasing numbers, but they weren't, in fact, career or college ready. So the problem that we saw was the ability to ensure that these courses are being taught at the appropriate level, that they're tracking the curriculum, and that the children are learning the curriculum. Last spring, when they gave the Algebra 1 and the biology test, you only had to get 37% of the questions correct to pass the test, as determined by the Commissioner of Education. I don't believe that's career or college ready. I think the standards need to be improved over time, and we must and we should do a better job. Also, for us, the concern is in the past, many of these courses have been taught, the so-called upper-level courses, where there's kind of a gentleman's agreement, if that's politically correct to say, wherein if the student comes to class, smiles at the teacher, says yes, sir, and yes, ma'am, and does the projects. Some of you may have experienced projects as parents. Perhaps some of you experienced projects as students. That an A or a B is given in the class. And in many cases, they're not even required to take a final examination. So there's no way to validate whether or not these tests, whether the material has been learned. We agree with some of the proposals to modify CT&E, but at the same time, we need to have two things happen. We need to have a foundation of career skills begun in high school, and we have to have the ability to go beyond high school, because in most cases there's not a high enough skill level taught in the public high schools to result in a meaningful career that will make that person a net contributor to society. And with regard to the STEM and or the humanities, I can't remember the exact terminology of pathways. Is that correct, sir, what you refer to them?
Endorsements.
Endorsements, sure. Sorry. Everybody has a different term, and some of them change daily. But anyway, the endorsements, to make sure that these courses are being taken and being taught properly. The only way we think we can ensure that is to maintain the testing system. So we would endorse testing at the higher level courses for those who are in the STEM or the humanities, if those are the terms that you all are using, to make sure that those courses are being taught properly. Our goal is to have a much higher percentage of our adults in Texas be eligible for the jobs. Am I getting that?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, that's our goal. If we want to keep the jobs in Texas, we're going to have to do a better job of educating our workforce. Thank you for your time and attention. I'd be happy to try to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Hammond?
Just a quick question.
Representative Davis.
Let me ask you if on the testing and what we're doing, how will that change to make kids more college ready?
Well, in effect, it'll certify them that they are college ready. I mean, the whole system, and there's a lot of data that the agency has to support that the new testing system gets kids to the goal of career or college ready, which should be, in our view, the mission of the schools.
So what's your definition of college ready?
Well, career or college ready, one would be that you could go to a community college without having to take remedial courses.
I guess from my understanding, I guess I'm new on this committee, but being college ready is that you're ready to enter a 4-year baccalaureate university.
Well, there's probably too much emphasis on going to college, or, in other words, a traditional 4-year school. Half our students go to community colleges nowadays. So I think that what we would like to see is, as a standard, is that they would be able to succeed at the community college level, complete the coursework, and go on to a meaningful life.
You think the reason they're taking so many remedial courses is because kids are being pushed towards the 4-year college university system, and they're finding school not relevant?
Well, I think relevance is very important. I think at the same time that the basic academic skills are not being taught or learned is the primary reason.
And they're not being learned because of why?
Well, because the system is failing to meet the needs of the employers, in our opinion, for a lot of different reasons. I think that we've had a standard for years now of the graduation test, but it's been at the 8th grade level. So that was the standard that we've used to allow a kid to graduate. You pass the test, you get to graduate, assuming you've taken the coursework associated with that. And that didn't get us where we need to be. That's, I think, the main motivating factor of, not the session has gone by that this passed this law into effect.
Yeah, I guess you say where we need to be, and I guess when you're saying where we need to be is to be for kids going to the 4-year university.
No, sir. No. Career or college ready, either one. I mean, if they could go to work for a company that was willing to hire and train them, that they could go to a community college and be successful in terms of just getting a certificate, or going to a technical institute and getting a certificate of some sort. All of the above would be our standard, not a 4-year institution necessarily.
Yeah, and I guess maybe I'm shifting here a little bit, but I guess like how we're measuring our schools. Again, I go back to that comment: we measure what we treasure. It's been a catchy phrase, but we don't measure any career or technical education. That's not even part of the performance measurements of how schools are measured or how they're graded, which means we really don't treasure it.
Right.
So.
Well, I'm sorry.
No, please.
I was just going to say, we've provided all of you with a plan that would be regarding curriculum and regarding testing. And we'd be happy to redistribute it. I don't have it here today to distribute, but your office has it. And on the career and technical pathway, we reduced course requirements, allowed for more electives, and also brought into the endorsement the possibility of getting a certificate while you're in high school, which we certainly endorse.
I guess so. I take it you weren't supportive of. I guess Hector Rivera was up here earlier talking about all the business groups and industry that's supportive of Chairman Aycock's bill, but you are an association that's not supportive of.
That's correct.
Bill.
I think if I can speak to the disconnect just for a second, I think there's some disconnect in terms of the fact that so many of these jobs out there require post-secondary education, and we are for strong career and technology education in high school. But I think in many cases, that does not get nearly as many kids as we need to be ready to go on beyond and be successful. Because so many of these jobs that are being created and have been created require some sort of post-secondary. Now, not all of them do. And, at this point, we're only saying that by our calculation or by ACT's calculation, that only about 25% are doing so. We're not asking the graph to go like this. We're asking the graph to go like, more like this over time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Huberty?
How you doing, Bill?
I'm good.
Good to see you.
A little bit in the minority today, I believe.
I think you are a little bit, but I think there's. I mean, obviously, I know where you're at on this particular issue. Give me the two top issues that you're against on this bill, and the two top things that you're for on this bill.
Well, I would say the top two things that we're for in this bill is generally the curriculum requirements as laid out by the chair. I would say we're generally in agreement with that. I mean, we might argue a little bit on the edges, but that would be one. And I'm not sure, did you talk, I wasn't able to be here earlier. Did you talk about some of the changes that you're proposing in the bill? Okay. Well, then I'm not at liberty to discuss those until the chair does. But I think that's very important. I think, we laid out a proposal to reduce the reliance on testing in our proposal. So those would be a couple of areas that we'd be supportive of. Our concern is, will this legislation result in more kids or the same amount of kids graduating career or college ready? And for 20 years or so, we haven't done the job, sir, that we need to do for the future of Texas. So if we're rolling back the requirements in HB3, are we rolling them back to the point where we won't succeed in graduating more kids career or college ready?
But I would surmise that as there's there's a bunch of old school board guys on here.
Right.
And the most frustrating thing that we had that came down is the mandates that came from the state that said you must do this thing.
Right.
For example, you must include 15% of these scores in the grading.
Right.
It's a ridiculous requirement, that we did things like that.
Well, we don't oppose that change.
Okay. Well, that's good. But there's other things like, does 15 tests, so go career and college ready, does every child need to have Algebra 2?
I'm not enough of an expert to say. I think that Commissioner Paredes has stated that Algebra 2 is necessary, and I would rely on his testimony more than I would in mine in that area. I don't think everyone, I would say I don't think that everyone needs Algebra 2. I would probably agree with that.
We're taking a test.
Right.
That's a baseline test, right? So every child, whether they're at AP or honors or below honors or whatever, is taking the test, right? That's the test that these kids are
in the current system, yes, sir, that's correct.
So do you think there's value in that to make sure that we're actually improving?
I think there's value in it for those who are going to a four-year school. For those who are on a career and or business and industry, again, I'm not sure what term is used in legislation, that Algebra 2 requirement, we don't speak to that. We'd say that you would have to pass 2 out of 3 Algebra 1 or geometry is our position specifically on that issue. So I think that incorporated in our proposal, there is some real flexibility both in course selection and in the requirements. And the question is where you draw the line. I mean, it's, in terms of overall for the student performance.
Last session we heard a lot from the, it was interesting, obviously my first session, and you learn how things work around here, and somebody always told me follow the money, where's the money go, and, where's it going? We spend $100 million a year on testing.
Yes, sir.
And, we've heard from groups last session and this session that are saying that are opposed to that. And, what I'm concerned about more than anything, are we doing the right thing for the kids? And are we giving local control, which we're not. We're mandating all these things. And we're not allowing our teachers to teach, which, it was funny, I had debates with people on that, and they would say to me, Dan, the testing's important because we want to make sure the teachers are doing what they're supposed to be doing. And I said, well, isn't that the job of the principal and the assistant superintendents and the superintendents and then the school boards? Isn't that what their job's supposed to be? Yet we believe that we're smarter than everybody else, and we're continuing to do this as we go forward. I just want to make sure that everybody knows that, let's set the $100 million contract aside for a second. Think, is this the right thing to do for our kids, and make sure that we're getting the right bang for our buck, so to speak, and then also making sure that we're trying to find a balance between what the business community, because I'm a businessman too, I want to get educated workforce out there versus making sure that we have a balance for these kids, because I think we're over-testing.
Okay. Can I speak to that, sir?
Yes, sir.
Well, I think that the cost of the system has been overblown to some extent. We're talking about roughly $20 per student per year. And if you consider that we're spending somewhere around $10,000 per year per student, our view is that we consider to be equivalent to a quality control program, $20 is a reasonable investment to make. With regard to the performance,
that's just the contract.
Okay, well,
sorry for not saying that. We have lumped in the rest of the costs associated with all the other costs with TEA and everybody else.
Right. Okay, I understand.
It's a huge number.
All right. With regard to the performance in the past, I don't think it's been there. Our view is that, with the exception of accountability, we would set the districts free, sir. That's our position. That's our stated position with regard to all these mandates. We support at-will employment, for instance. I don't think the state should dictate to your district their contractual arrangements with their teachers, just as an example. But at the same time, I think that, unfortunately, in far too many cases, we have not gotten the results that we need and deserve based on the investment. Therefore, an accountability system does make sense.
And this is my last comment. I don't think any of us up here suggest that we're going to give $50 billion to schools and not ask for some sort of system, an accountability system. And hopefully, Hammond, we can work and find some middle ground. And
yes, sir.
Some of the
well, that's certainly our hope, and we offered this up, which we'll redeliver to y'all's offices, if that's okay.
Representative Farney.
Hello, Bill. So it's a pleasure to visit with you. You certainly think things through. One thing you mentioned was Algebra 1 being one of the major areas, I think one of the top two actually, for remediation in colleges and universities. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
I agree with you, and I think there's plenty of data that shows that, but I wonder if you would consider something. I feel like the problem lies elsewhere instead of even with the testing on that, and that goes with something where you and I have some history, and that is with our elementary standards, where the students are actually being taught that there is not a focus from K or 1 even through up through 5th grade, where what we call the basic algorithms, through grade 3 and then in grade 4, where we do everything is geared towards a basic fundamental knowledge and understanding of algebra. And I wonder what your thoughts are on that is where we need to go back and maybe make some changes.
Sure.
Is at that level to where we have a direct and clear focus from our TEKS, from the standards, that everything goes towards what's considered a gatekeeper course, as you just mentioned, that if you don't do well in Algebra 1, you're going to have difficulty in probably all the other areas, the higher levels of math. And if we could make those changes there, maybe it could become a gateway course instead of a gatekeeper course.
Well, of course, you're the expert on this issue. So I think that, we engaged on the issue of the math standards now, I think it was June of last year, and had serious concerns, and the state board responded, not completely, but largely to our concerns. I think the biggest concern is that there are too many standards, and there's not enough depth. And I think that's really true across the board with a lot of things. I mean, I think I served a few years ago on the Commission for College Ready Texas, which was a misnomer, okay? I didn't like the name, but, Craddock put me on it, so I went and attended the meetings as much as I could. But there's one thing that I learned is that the K-12 is more about experiencing a lot of different things and emoting, if you will, in terms of like writing, which is obviously a major problem in Texas today and perhaps the country, and not so much on the fundamentals of how to write a sentence and a paragraph, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And what the higher education community, whether it's the community colleges or the four-year, seek from the K-12 is a better foundation. So I think there's room for improvement in that area.
I think if we were able to address that, we would see a direct correlation as those students advanced up in grades with our Algebra 1 course, the grades, the testing, we would see a tremendous improvement.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Appreciate it. Oh,
Davis.
Almost.
No, that's right. On the 4x4 and flexibility, do you support the flexibility in Chairman Aycock's?
In general, yes, sir, we do.
Okay, you support that.
Right.
Madam Chair.
Just when I thought I was done.
Okay. Representative Redler.
Thank you. Sorry I didn't catch your eye. Hi, Bill. How are you?
Good, sir.
Just a couple of follow-up questions. I think where I'm getting off track a little bit is the difference we're hearing from superintendents and professional educators, the difference between career and college ready. I think it's easy to say career and college ready, but I think we can all recognize there's probably a difference there about whether a kid's going to a 4-year Tier 1 university or whether he's trying to get a professional certification so he can go directly into the workforce. What are your thoughts about the differences in the accountability system and as contained in House Bill 5 about recognizing that there is a difference between where those kids are headed?
Well, I mean, you know, I'll admit it. I mean, I'm a 30,000-foot guy on this deal. So I think that the Commissioner of Higher Education and the Commissioner of Public Education or Education have worked together to try to create a standard, and that there is some agreement, but I would have to research and get back to you in that regard. I'm sorry. Just don't.
But, I mean, do you...
I guess I come down and decide maybe it's not as much difference as people might think. Because, you know, to go to Texas State Technical College to pursue a job as a machine operator, which is basically today a computer programmer, I'm not sure how much lower the standards would be on an entry level for that as opposed to going to, you know, one of the 4-year institutions. I'm not sure how much difference there is. And I think that's probably the heart and soul of some of the disagreement that we have with some of our friends on this issue.
Being that I'm one of the new people up here, I'm kind of looking at this maybe a little differently than some other members. From where I'm coming from, I'm kind of wanting to reset the table. I think that we wouldn't have 100 people in this room that I would wager to say most of them probably disagree with you on a couple of things.
Yes, sir. I think that's probably correct.
That if we didn't need to rethink what we're doing. And so I want to go back 4 years and say, based on where we were 4 years ago, compare HB5 today to what we were trying to accomplish in the last biennium. If we take it from that perspective, can you give me your feedback on whether you think HB5 is an improvement on where we came from as opposed to where we are?
I think it's a drastic improvement as to where we were, excuse me. I think HB5 is a dramatic improvement to where we were prior to the passage of HB3. Yes, sir.
Okay. Right. So, given that I think that's where I'm coming from.
Sure.
So, I think we all agree that you even said it, there's too many standards and not enough depth.
Right.
And I think that what I'm looking at from my perspective and what I heard, and one of the reasons I'm sitting here today is because there's a lot of people that think we went too far.
Yes, sir.
And so, I'm kind of trying to look back 2 years.
I would say that we have made a proposal and delivered it to your office that does roll back, if that's the term you want to use, to some extent, not to the extent in House Bill 5, but some. So.
Okay. I just wanted to get your opinion on where we were versus where we are.
Yes,
now,
sir.
So.
I agree with your thesis.
Thank you.
How many?
One minute, please. We have a Denise Lujan. Is she still here? If you make your questions real quick, she has a 6:25 flight, and it's 5 o'clock. You're pushing here.
So real quick,
So if you'll make your questions real fast, and we have 3 questions: Patrick, Davis, and Villaria.
Okay. So I was going to let you go, but I just got to not
almost
let you
escaped.
go. Yeah. I just have a problem with the logic that I hear you laying out. And that is that high stakes testing leads to college readiness or career readiness.
Yes.
And then you point to today's figures of college readiness, 25%, or if you take out if you only count if you just look at the students who started high school, that's 19%. But that's under today's status quo. That's with high stakes testing. That's with the current regime of standardized testing.
Okay.
So you know, everybody else has been laying out an argument that says not high stakes testing leads to college readiness, but rather high stakes testing is the cause of narrowing of the curriculum. It's the cause of meaningless passage rates. We heard in our first meeting, TEA celebrate 70% of schools are passing various STAR exams, but when you look at how many questions they get right, it's like 40% of 5th grade math. That's what success is. So corners being cut. And then the stuff that we really care about, like creative minds, kids who have a can-do spirit, problem solvers, that stuff isn't tested. Grit, persistence, that's not tested. So while the idea of we measure what we treasure rhymes, it's not true. And this logic that high-stakes testing is going to save us. Well, we have high-stakes testing today, and it is the cause of this 19% aren't ready for college or a career.
Well, if I may respond, sir, I think that the high-stakes testing that we've had up until now has been at an 8th grade level to graduate from high school. And that's exacerbated the problem because it hasn't gotten the kids to career college ready. So while we may have had a high-stakes testing, it just simply hasn't produced the results because it was the wrong kind of testing. Not that testing was the issue, the wrong kind of testing.
We need to ratchet up. And
sure.
Do you also support tying funding to teacher salaries? And
I think that the performance of the teacher and students academically should be part of the evaluation of the teacher. Yes, sir. Absolutely.
All right.
And I think the only way you can do that is if you have a valid model, which includes a growth measure. And so I don't know how you would do it elsewise if you didn't have that in place.
Last point, I know Pearson, and correct me if I'm wrong, Pearson's a part of your organization.
Yes, sir, they are. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I would like to speak. Can I speak to that, sir?
Please.
I served in the Texas House in 1983 and was a supporter of House Bill 72. And I passed a requirement that said a kid had to pass a test to graduate from high school. So I would suggest to you and the other members of the committee that while, yes, Pearson is a member of our organization, my personal commitment and our commitment to testing and accountability precedes by many, many years the Pearson situation. Is not about, yes, that's correct, they are a member of ours, but at the same time, that's not why I'm here today. That's really not the issue. Some may say that, and I don't know how I can dispute it other than to say that I have a 30-year history of belief in the value of public education and worked as what I consider a critical friend to see that it's improved over the years, and I think I have a pretty good track record.
I'm not questioning your intention, but the stakes are high.
Yes, sir.
Their contract is near $500 million over a 4-year period, and frankly, when the stakes are that high, we often don't make decisions that are in the best interest of children. We make them in the best interest of the adults in the room.
I think that the relationship between the state of Texas and the testing company is that of a vendor, and that there was a RFP put out that laid out what they wanted them to do and how they wanted them to do it. And if they are not following that contract, then they should be brought to make the changes. If there are changes needed in the contract, then that would be appropriate, in your opinion, or the others, whatever, of the agency or the members of the legislature. In other words, if they're not doing what the agency wants them to do, tell them to do it differently. I think the customer in this case is the TEA, because that's the contract, who they have the contract with. So if they're not doing what TEA wants them to do, then they need to change the contract. Like,
you've been around here long enough, and you know that there are former folks at TEA that are now with Pearson.
Right. I guess there are. I don't really know offhand, but
yeah.
I understand. But at the same time, I think that it's a contractual relationship, and if they're not performing satisfactorily, or if there are modifications that should be made, then let's make them.
The next state closest to us in student population is New York, and they spend about $40 million over a 4-year period.
Right.
They're way out there and
Right.
anomaly in this area. So I appreciate your voice and the clarity in your representation. Thank you.
I'm trying. Dr. Patrick?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, for allowing me to speak. And thank you for your long history of dedication to trying to improve education in the state. Some of us have been at it a really long time. A question related to the developmental ed and concerns about that. I share your concern. I don't think we ought to be sending anyone out of high school that's not prepared to do post-secondary work, community college, or four-year institution. But one of the things I wanted to ask you about, the placement in developmental education is based on your performance on what is known commonly as the ACT. And so there are several programs in the state, one in El Paso with the business community involved, and that's actually being replicated here in Austin. And the ACT placer is the determinant of whether or not the student needs to be placed in developmental education classes. The coordinating board is actually developing a new test that's going to include our new career and college readiness standards, and will be a good measure of that. So would you support this new Texas Success Initiative in lieu of end of course exams, given that it is the actual?
Right. Well, I think that idea, along with the ideas to use the SAT or the ACT, have mechanical problems. I mean, they're not criterion reference, for one thing. And perhaps this exam would be criterion reference. I don't know what the plan is. But, the time at which the tests are actually given, I think present problems. I'm not sure that you can figure out the mechanics of how you make it work. If you're, a ninth grade boy, not a girl now, a boy would be less serious perhaps in their educational pursuits than a girl, or that's my experience anyway, is that, you might well say, I don't really need to worry about this thing. I'm going to do really well on the SAT. I can do the test, so I'm going to kind of blow off these other tests on my pathway to getting to the SAT. So I think there are concerns about trying to substitute, one or two exams at the end of the trail.
Well, the test in many cases would be given after the sophomore year or the junior year and used diagnostically and prescriptively to remediate students while they're still in high school. So, but it is in fact
perhaps
the very test that would be used to determine whether they need to be placed in developmental ed. And by the way, it's only in math and English.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah, I mean, we would, we're not necessarily opposed to it. I just think there are some concerns about how the mechanics work, that's all.
Very short.
Very short. I'm trying to help this lady catch a plane. She may not get to El Paso tonight.
Well, I'll drive you
there.
Have
to stay with me.
No.
Promises.
Yeah. You mentioned a TAB plan.
Yes, sir.
Has that been delivered to our office?
Everyone's office, and tomorrow morning, a fresh copy will be delivered to everyone's office.
Okay, because my office hasn't received it, and I just.
Okay, I think we distributed it to you, but it's been a while, so it was December.
Oh, in December.
Yes, sir, but we're going to do it again tomorrow morning, I assure you.
Okay, that's it. El Paso.
Thank you all very much. I appreciate the opportunity.